late 17th century, Salem Village became a horror scene. Overnight, people were accused of being witches, and the community was turned upside down. The infamous Salem witch trials would change the history of Salem forever. In the 1600s, Salem extended throughout the entire North Shore, including parts of the Tri-Town. Despite the fact that Salem and Salem Village were considered one, many people viewed them as different towns and wanted Salem to separate into Salem and Salem Village. The city of Salem would be considered the more economic area, while Salem Village was a farming community. Both parts of Salem needed each other. The city would get goods from England and would trade with the farming community for farm goods. It was one big circle. This dispute between whether or not to split Salem was inadvertently the spark of the witch trials. Roger Conant came to Salem, which was originally known as Nom Ceag, in 1626. He was the leader of a fishing company that found him Salem, and he was also the governor until a patent, which gave the rights to Salem, was solicited from England by Endicott and his followers. Conant was then replaced as governor by Endicott, but he chose to remain in Salem. The Salem witch trials lasted less than 2 years, but it wasn't short enough to prevent the murders of 19 innocent men and women and the torture that over 150 people had to endure in jail. The causes of the 1692 Salem witch trials are not completely known, but they include and are not limited to politics, religion, family feuds, economics, fear, and imagination. To the people of Salem, the term witchcraft had a literal translation to a pact with the devil. The accusations of who was considered a witch would spread from one village to another in the same way a rumor gets spread around today. Many of the times, people were accused of being witches because of past family arguments that were still held as grudges, or simply because they didn't like each other. Whatever the reason was, it ended up resulting in the worst outbreak of witchcraft in North American history. When the witch trials were at their highest, everyone participated in accusing someone as a witch, but it was usually done by kids from the age of 11 to their teens. All it took was for one person to accuse someone as a witch, for others to come out and accuse the same person as well. Many would claim that they could see their tormentor's shadow or feel their presence in the room. The victims also claimed that they were forced into doing things they didn't want to, and that their bodies were contorted into painful positions. One interesting way to identify if an accused witch was actually a witch was to perform the touch test. In this test, if the accused witch touched the victim when they were having a fit and the fit stopped, they would be a witch. There was witchcraft hysteria in special courts for the trials. At the beginning, they allowed the trials to take place without any real evidence. They allowed spectral evidence. The English law did not get involved because it was a local issue. Some people at the end of the trials would sue the government for compensation and clear names. The Salem witch trials were over in less than 2 years, leaving behind a huge scar in Salem. The first person who lost their life was Bridget Bishop, and the last person to lose their life in these nonsense accusations was Samuel Wardwell. Rebecca Nurse was one of the first few. Rebecca Nurse was arrested on March 23, 1692 for witchcraft, and she was hung July 19, 1692. She was born on February 21, 1621, in Great Yarmouth, England. In 1640, her family moved to Topsfield, Massachusetts. She married Francis Nurse, and together they had 8 children, 4 girls and 4 boys. Rebecca, Sarah, John, Samuel, Mary, Elizabeth, Francis, and Benjamin. They lived on 300 acres, and they would always travel to the meeting house for various reasons. Their family was well respected in town, and some people resented their fortune, and they had land disputes with the Putnam family. Later, the Putnams would be the ones who accused Rebecca of being a witch. Some of the children, including Anne Putnam, claimed to have episodes and said that Rebecca was using witchcraft on them. During her trial, she insisted she was innocent. The original verdict for her trial was not guilty, but it was changed. When Hobbs accused her of being a witch in trial, Rebecca said, "What do you bring her? She is one of us." Rebecca was talking about Hobbs, who was also a prisoner. Then, when they asked her to explain her words, but she couldn't because she had a hearing issue and didn't hear the question. The people believed that her not answering was the same as her admitting to being guilty, so the verdict would change to guilty, and she was hung. It is said that Rebecca Nurse and the Holtons also had arguments, and then he died shortly after. His wife then said that she killed him with witchcraft. 2 of Rebecca's sisters, Mary Easty and Sarah Cloyce, were also accused of being witches. Sarah Cloyce was not executed unlike her 2 other sisters. Finally, in 1711, her family gained compensation from the government for wrongful death. is on the west side of the property, but there are also other people and families buried there, such as the Putnam and Tarbo families. Rebecca was secretly buried by her family, who took her body from Gallows Hill. On July 30th, 1885, the Nurse family dedicated a memorial to Rebecca. The Salem witch trials, which lasted from 1692 to 1693, was the worst outbreak of its kind in North American history, and today the effects are still being felt. Salem can now be considered the witch capital of the United States. Around the time of Halloween, tourists flock to Salem to visit all the Halloween attractions and the historical sites of the witch trials, but the places that held the most significance to these trials are outside the actual city of Salem. The Rebecca Nurse Homestead is so important because it gives us an actual glimpse into the past when the trials were occurring, and it gives a glimpse into the actual life of an accused witch who was innocent.